Good morning. Let's begin with a prayer. May the words of my mouth and the thoughts of all our hearts be acceptable to you, God, our Creator, our Redeemer, and our Sustainer. Amen. Today's Gospel reading is immensely powerful. If you remember, it follows on from the feeding of the 5,000 men, assorted women and children. Last week, Sally showed us how Jesus hadn't actually gone out to feed 5,000 people. He'd gone to try and find a quiet place to pray because he had heard that his cousin, his herald, John the Baptist, had been beheaded. When he arrived at his quiet place, he found he was sharing it with a huge crowd, so rather than have his downtime with God, he meted out the love of God in generous measure all day. And we pick up today, just after that, the leftovers have been gathered up into 12 baskets, and Jesus is gently encouraging people to go home, and he's told the disciples to get in the boat and go to the other side of the lake where he will meet them once he has prayed. But the Sea of Galilee whips up one of its infamous storms, and they are violent, apparently. The waves would have been hitting the deck, washing over the boat. The wind whips round in spirals, so the spray from the sea and the rain are driven horizontally into people in boats if they get caught out in those storms. And here we have the disciples battling a storm, just trying to keep the boat afloat and make it to land. Alongside that terrifying experience, there was also a deep-rooted fear. 2,000 years ago, all the civilizations around the Mediterranean had the same deep-rooted fear of deep water. Whichever religion they followed, all those religions had a belief that it was necessary to perform certain funeral rites in order to release a soul to move on to the next life. So if somebody died at sea and the funeral couldn't happen, that person was doomed to an eternity of oblivion, nothingness, non-existence, just being without a body, without anyone else, without anything. And that is a terrifying thought indeed. So alongside the fear of the storm itself, the disciples were also terrified of the idea of going overboard, being drowned. They were terrified of oblivion. So it's no wonder that when through the squall of the wind and the rain and the waves, they saw a figure walking towards them, they assumed that that figure was a ghost. Jesus heard the rising terror in their voices and called out to reassure them. It's me, don't worry. And immediately, Peter's impetuosity kicks in. Bless him, we love him, don't we? If it's really you, then tell me. In fact, the Greek word is more like command or order. Command me to come to you. So Jesus does, and Peter climbs over the side of the boat and walks across the water towards Jesus. What incredible faith. Could you have done it? Don't think I could. But of course, Peter's human senses kick in. He realizes what he's doing, and he starts to doubt and he starts to sink. So he calls out to Jesus, who hoiks him out of the water, sets him on his feet, chastises him very gently, really, and they walk back to the boat together. When they reach the boat, the storm and the fear dissipate. The disciples have realized what they saw, not a ghost, but God himself. Jesus, who was there at the beginning, creating the universe, creating nebulae that would give birth to new stars, creating the supermassive black holes that power galaxies, and at a slightly smaller level on planet Earth, creating weather systems. This Jesus, who wrote the laws of physics, is not bound by them. The storm didn't affect him. He was defying the law of gravity. The disciples realize they have seen God and they worship. But they worship in safety because they are with Jesus. It's the proximity to Jesus which brings the safety. Same's true for us. Being close to Jesus brings safety. What can touch us when so much power is surrounding us and protecting us? But we often feel that we're not close to God. Our fears and anxieties and worries and concerns can get in the way, just as Peter's human senses got in the way. We can sink in a mire of these worries and anxieties, but Jesus can hoik us out and set us on our feet and continue, as he always has done, to walk with us and guide us. Peter asked for help, but the other disciples didn't. They just waited in the boat in abject fear. Jesus still rescued them. It's a very hopeful point. We should ask, we should know that we can ask, but if we don't, all is not lost. Jesus is always right beside us, and he won't let us fail. We only feel as if we're failing when we give in to the fears and forget that he's right beside us. Amen.